to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Wendy Egbert, the Assistant Director of Athletics at Mountain Crest High School in Hiram, Utah. Welcome to the podcast, Wendy.
Thank you.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience where you grew up, where you went to school, college, first job, those types of things.
Okay. I grew up in Jerome, Idaho. I basically went, only place I ever lived is Jerome, Idaho. And then I went to Utah State. For college, I got a full ride scholarship for the track and field team there. Graduated there with my physical education degree, and I taught my first job. I taught at Mound Ford Middle School for 2 years.
I know where that is.
I loved it.
You would know this, but I used to have a field testing business, and years ago, when I used to test fields for Ogden, they had me test their junior high fields every other year, and so there was a couple times I went to Mound Ford, and yeah, because it's not a common name, so that's good. So how many years were you there?
I was there for 2 years.
And then?
And then I started having kids, and so then I've been a stay-at-home mom for a long time till I landed in this job. So
perfect. So talk about growing up in Jerome and talk about any of the opportunities you may have had to play youth sports.
I played all 3 seasons in high school, all 4 years. I played volleyball, I played basketball, and then my freshman year, for some reason, I tried golf. Wasn't very good at it. So then I switched to track and found a lot of success in track.
Okay, talk a little bit more about that. So I'm assuming then the scholarship to Utah State was a track scholarship.
It was. So my sophomore year, I was a thrower. So I threw shot and discus, was pretty good at it. My junior year in Idaho, they have a thing called the Weight Man's Relay. And it's a real event, and you have to be a thrower in order to run. And it's a 4x1 event. We run and we use the batons. We don't use any kind of crazy, we're not handing off shot puts or anything, but you have to have competed in one of the throwing events to qualify to be in this relay. And so my sophomore year, I would be the anchor in our Weight Man's Relay, and I would blow everybody away sprinting. So my junior and senior year, I ended up being a sprinter and a thrower.
Okay. So let's talk about Utah State. Were you able to do both there, or did they specialize you?
No, I was specialized. Fun thing with Utah State is I got the privilege to learn how to throw the hammer, which only became a female event my senior year in college.
What year would that have been?
1995.
Okay, so that was the first year. So did you throw shot and discus in addition to that?
I did. In 96, I ended up being ranked 4th in the nation in the hammer.
That's awesome.
So I actually got to compete in the 96 Olympic trials.
No, that's incredibly awesome. So let me ask you, so 96, That's it was past Atlanta. It wasn't Atlanta
No,
like
that
92,
it
so
was in Atlanta, Georgia.
it was Atlanta. Okay, so talk about, my goodness, I don't know if I've had any people that have been on the podcast that have participated in Olympic trials. Talk about the Olympic trials. I assume, I don't know this, I assume they were up at the University of Oregon because that seems to be where they always have it. But talk about where that was. Talk about competing and what a great experience that would have been.
Okay. They weren't in Eugene, but normally they were held in Eugene. But because in 96, they built the stadium for the opening exercises and um, the new track for the Olympics, they actually held the trials in the Olympic Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. So, which was amazing to watch. And it's kind of overwhelming, I think. You're just awestruck. You never expect to compete at that high of a level. Like I don't know if anybody remembers the golden spikes from Michael Johnson, but
Uh-huh.
I watched him compete. He was on the track the same time I was throwing, and you're rubbing shoulders with all of these big, huge stars that you've watched on TV, and it was a lot of fun.
Let me ask you this, because I wouldn't know because I didn't compete in track in college. So I'm assuming there was times during your collegiate career that you did compete in Eugene at that
Yes,
nice facility. So
yes.
I want to ask you the difference because I know Eugene's in the west, a little bit higher up elevated, and not the big humidity. And I know when you compete in Atlanta because the humidity is like 90, 95%. It's a little bit hotter. So talk about the difference in competing in the two venues because to me it would be like it would be night and day.
It's yes, it is. I don't think competing in track and field you'll ever find a better arena to compete in than Eugene. Um, no matter, I don't know if whoever, a lot of people have been to Eugene, but no matter what curve you're on or what straightway you're on the track, there is always an uproar from the crowd as you're running around the track. Um, Even the throwing events, except for the hammer, are all in the middle. Everybody gets to see and they participate, and the crowd is amazing at Eugene. And I competed in the NCAAs in Eugene, Oregon, my senior year. But for the Olympic trials, especially with the hammer, the crowd just wasn't there. So
Mm,
you had this huge, huge stadium, and nobody really attends the Olympic trials. The crowd just wasn't as spectacular as you get when you go to Eugene.
okay, well, thanks for that insight. Let me ask you about some of the mentors and leaders that you've had in your life that have made a big difference to you.
Um, I've had a couple. So my high school throwing coach made a huge difference. His name was Bob Williams. He has since passed away, but he was a huge influence in my life and got me to where I was able to compete at a higher level. Most throwing coaches in high school coach because they were told to, or they really don't know what the technique and the technical aspect of throwing. Um, Another big mentor for me is my dad. My dad was a collegiate athlete at Boise State. He wrestled for Boise State back in the day, and so I've watched him, and he's coached for 25 years. He was also an official for wrestling. So I've always watched him and have been very impressed. I know quite a few people that his athletes will come back as they've grown older and stuff and have talked to him and said, "You made a difference in my life." So I've really watched him and want to emulate what he does.
Incredible experiences. Thanks you for sharing that. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Wendy. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
So after the 96 Olympics, I had a baby and then I tried to get back to the Olympics in 2000. I was 3 inches away from qualifying for the trials again. I think
Mm,
that is one of the biggest failures. I felt like I was so close, but life goes on. And I think when we have failures like that, we turn a corner and we just have to pick ourselves up and continue on.
some great insight. Thank you for sharing that. That had to have been, well, I'm guessing it had to have been real disappointing because obviously you were right there in the
Yes,
Olympic trials in
yes.
'96 and then trying to come back and to be that close. So thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit more about your background. So obviously, uh, you became a stay-at-home mom after all this, after Mountain Ford, and then you got back into education when your kids were older. Talk about your background and your road that led you to becoming the assistant AD up at Mountain Crest, which, by the way, I'll be driving by today on my way to Utah State's game tonight because I have a grandson plays for the Aggies.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I won't be at that game because my son is a senior here at Mountain Crest and they play Green
Mm-hmm.
Canyon. So the same
Oh,
time,
okay. Yeah, there you go.
the
Perfect.
valley will be packed.
I'm sure it will be. So yeah, so talk about how when you got back into education and how you got that assistant AD job. How did that happen?
A kind of crazy story. I wasn't looking to get back into teaching, wasn't looking back to get back into education. Um, I actually was babysitting our vice principal's kid. That's what I did to kind of have an extra income coming in. And I was in North Carolina at a soccer nationals watching one of my daughters play, and the principal and the vice principal called, and our AD had just quit, and the new AD really didn't want to take on the full responsibility. And they knew I loved athletics. I was involved in the school with my kids and coming and doing all of that. And they basically kind of almost handpicked me and offered me the job while I was in North Carolina.
That's awesome. So what year would that have been?
Let's see, about 2000. So 2020.
Okay. Let me ask you this because I see the logo in the background. This dates me, but I can remember because I was at Jordan for those 34 years, a long time ago. But I remember when Jordan, before the new school and Mountain Crest were in the same classification, and I can remember when Mountain Crest was a brand new school.
Oh,
And so now it's been probably, well, it's been over 40 years now, I think,
yeah.
maybe closer to 50. But talk about, because really it was Skyview north of Logan and then basically Mountain Crest south of Logan. And I remember that was, brand new, etc. So talk about because they have a history of athletic accomplishments there.
Yes, we have. And in fact, since I've been involved, so I really got involved after Mountain Crest broke off with Ridgeline. So
Hmm.
before I started this job, we had just separated from Ridgeline and made Ridgeline High School. So our valleys even doubled the schools since just Mountain Crest and Skyview.
I heard there's talk about another high school in South Cache Valley. Is that true or is that just rumor I'm hearing?
I I I have not heard anything. I think
Okay.
that's just rumor. Cause I think we're pretty full. I don't
Because
know
you
where they
have,
put it.
yeah, because you have Green Canyon, Skyview North, and you have Ridgeline and Mountain Crest South. Okay, perfect.
And we have Logan in the center.
Well, Logan in the middle, and
Yeah,
Logan's down a classification, right?
yes. They just moved
Okay.
this year down to 3A.
Well, let me ask you about the job of athletic administrator. And since you've been involved as an AD, how has it changed or how is it the same?
Um, I think as we add more and more sports, I think AD position is getting harder and harder. Um, our spring schedule is crazy,
Hmm.
and you have to manage turf time, and spring is hard because you have to cancellations because of snow, especially up here in Cache Valley. Springtime can be a little rough because we get snowstorms in April.
And sometimes May. Yeah.
I have a birthday in late June, and I have a picture when I was up at Utah State, and it is snowing on my birthday.
Wow. That is incredible. And I would think, I know springtime is crazy because they've obviously added the lacrosses, both of them. Well, it's probably been 5 years ago. The boys volleyball just a couple years ago. And spring was crazy enough without those. And now, I can't even imagine with the amount of teams you have doing that. So thanks for sharing that insight. I want you to talk about your journey with the UIAAA. I think I've seen you at least a couple of conferences down in St. George. Talk about how you heard about it, how you became involved, those types of things.
Um, my first year, I kind of got told this is where I was going and this is what I was doing. And I went to the conference and met a lot of people, kind of networked a little bit, that kind of thing. I've been to a couple since, and I've even started taking some of the classes to get certified and that kind of stuff. So it's a slow process amongst all the things that you have to do around here, but it's been rewarding. I loved the classes that I have taken and look forward to taking more.
Excellent. Let me ask you this. Could be a touchy subject with some of our listeners out there, but and I realize there's more and more women in the field of athletic administration, but I'm hoping from your point of view that some of those good old boys and the way they treat women, I'm hoping that that's gone. But since you've been in athletic administration, has it been, have the other ADs been inviting, or do we still have some of that old school that we have to weed out?
No, I don't think I've never had that impression. I think nowadays, like I work with Kevin, our AD, and we work
Right.
great together. Um, if there's an athlete that he can't touch, maybe I bring a different perspective. Even with some coaches, if they're having a problem, we bounce ideas off of each other. So I really haven't ran into the good old boys mentality at all since I've had this position.
That's good. That's good to hear because I've had some guests on um, that might be a little bit older than you that can remember. I think, in the 70s and 80s and maybe even the early 90s,
Oh,
it was a little bit different. So I'm glad to hear that that's your point of view on that. Let me ask you this, Wendy. What's one common myth about being an AD that you'd like to debunk to the general public?
that this position, all we ever do is just watch sports.
Hmm.
Nobody realizes that sport may be going on, but how did they get there? How did they get refs there? How did they, you know,
Mm-hmm.
who takes care of the field? There's a lot of things behind the scenes that we take care of so everybody can enjoy that game that they're watching.
I think that's so well said. I'm chuckling to myself because I can remember in the spring at Jordan High all those years ago, without I'm not exaggerating. And there was one day because it was a makeup soccer game. So we had a baseball game going on. We had the soccer game in the outfield of the softball diamond, enclosed. Had a softball game going on and a track meet the same day. And so I
Oh,
can remember standing up in the platform of the stadium where I could see the baseball game, the soccer game, the softball game, and then turn around and watch the track meet at the same time. So I think that is some great insight that you've given us. What's the favorite part of your job, Wendy?
I love connecting with the kids, the athletes. I love being here. If you come into our office during lunchtime, it is jam packed full. And the kids, staff, right now it's football players. Next, next, go around, it'll be basketball players mixed with a bunch of other athletes. And I enjoy connecting with those kids.
Tell me about this thought just came to me, so it wasn't on the questions that I sent you.
Right.
Tell me about the um, I think it must be a district decision because Logan is their separate district with Logan High, and then you've got Green Canyon, Skyview, Ridgeline, Mountain Crest, all in the Cache County School District.
Yep.
But I think you're much like the schools in the St. George area. When they get so big, they just build another school, so their schools don't get too big. So what's it like being in that 4A region? Luckily, now they've got at least a couple of 4A regions in Utah County and Salt Lake. But for a couple of years, it was 4A was St. George and 4A was Cache Valley. And
Yep.
for those not familiar with Utah, there are some of those listeners. That's 400 miles apart. So talk about the advantages of having that region and some of the travel issues that you may have, even though we've got some Salt Lake area and some Utah County area 4A leagues now. Well, I think Tooele's
Really,
in with you now. Yeah.
right, right. All the three Tooele schools are in with our region now. There's some advantages and some disadvantages. It's nice because travel, there was no advantage really for the home crowd because if you're only traveling 5 minutes to Ridgeline, everybody's going to come rather than as if you played far away like we have to now, your student body and your, community aren't going to travel as far.
Right.
And so we really have great showing from the community and the student body because we're all just really close right here. So that was one of the advantages we had with just our region being in Cache Valley. Disadvantages, I think a lot of times our kids miss out on the long bus rides where you can bond as a team.
Hmm.
I think those bus rides teach your team how to connect with one another. If you're going out to dinner and, you know, girls braid hair, I was always the person on the team who braided all the hairs during the long bus rides. I think that's when, as a team, you bond. And when you're all in the same valley, it's a 5 minute bus ride. So you don't have that time. You have to find some other way to bond as a team rather than your bus rides.
That is some great insight. Thank you for sharing that. Let me finish up with a couple of questions here, Wendy. The first being this. You've got two suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator, and they need to follow Wendy's suggestions in order to become successful. What would those two suggestions be?
I would say first, reach out to other ADs. All of us are willing to share what has worked, what hasn't worked. When I was new in the job, in the position, calling other ADs in our region was a huge help. And everybody's willing to give you suggestions. And that doesn't mean you have to do it exactly like Mountain Crest did it, or you have to do it exactly like Skyview did it. But if you take that suggestion question and tweak it a little bit. You don't have to start from ground zero trying to implement something.
Sure. And your second one?
Second one, just I would say connect with the athletes. These high school kids will look back on their high school careers and look at people who have influenced their life. I know I do. Some of my coaches have been the greatest mentors and people that I know. I don't know. My favorite thing here is we have a cooler full of chocolate milk from that we get through the
milk grant, sure.
Yes, the milk grant.
Dairy West,
and
yeah.
all the athletes have to come in and talk to me in order to get a chocolate milk. It is the simplest thing, but I see them face to face, and it's my favorite part of the day.
Perfect. Two great suggestions. Thanks for sharing that. Let's finish with this, Wendy. What question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I think you covered all of them.
All right,
I don't
perfect.
think there's anything else.
Well, on that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Wendy Egbert, the Assistant Director of Athletics at Mountain Crest High School in Hiram, Utah, up in Cache Valley. Wendy, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.